What's up, independent agents? Are you driving your clients off to the carrier self-servicing platforms after the sale just to minimize your service demand? Stop doing that with the premier mobile and web agency solution, GloveBox. Now you can keep your clients in front of your agency at all times, all while delivering the carrier self-service experience that will minimize your service costs and absolutely wow your customers. On top of that, GloveBox will help you increase your cross-sales, referrals, and overall retention with an easy-to-use policyholder interface. Trust me, guys, we're using this at Portal Insurance, and this is literally happening. We are selling policies and servicing policies through our app. Schedule your demo with GloveBox today, and be sure to mention the Insurance Guys podcast for 20% off of your subscription for the life of your account. Guys, it's so cool that I can tell my clients, download the Portal app. Thanks, GloveBox.
Insurance agents from around the world, welcome to the Insurance Guys podcast. My name is Scott Howell, your fearless host and leader, insurance agency owner and insurance evangelist for I Protect Insurance and Financial Services, based out of Huntsville, Alabama. And before we get started on today's episode, please help me welcome. He is a 6'3" sophomore from Saraland, Alabama. Parade first team All-American, Rivals 5-star recruit. He is a fantastic insurance agent and a great American. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome the incomparable Mr. Bradley Flowers. How are you, Bradley?
Great, Scott. How are you today?
Best I have ever been. Bradley, before we get started on the podcast today, I've got to get something off my chest.
Okay.
Very occasionally, I watch a Netflix movie from time to time. And every single Netflix movie that I watch, guys, I'm about to give you guys the best piece of advice I have ever given you. I'm going to do away with all Netflix movies, Prime movies, First 48. Here's my advice to every one of you. If you ever have a police officer or a detective come to your place of business or your house and say these words, we would like for you to come downtown with us and answer a few questions. Here is what I want you to do, ladies and gentlemen. Please never forget this. You look at them, you politely say, I would really like to do that, and I'll be happy to do that, but I will be unable to do that until I get in touch with my lawyer and have him meet us downtown at the interview room. That's all I want you to say. Bradley, every single Netflix movie I watch, the police knock on the front door and they go, hey, we need you to come downtown. We need you to answer some questions for us. And every single time the dumbass gets in the car with them, goes to the interview room and sits there without an attorney and just blah, 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 blah. Why is that? Why do people do that? Same with the First 48. Yep. My wife will tell you I cannot watch the First 48. And that is real stuff there, right? That is real people sitting in an interview room without an attorney getting interviewed. And I'm like, people, you are about to go to jail right now.
See, I'm more of a Dateline kind of guy.
Same thing.
I like Dateline. I'm not a First 48. I want to see after the fact where they put all the cinematic effects to the actual story.
Right.
And it's that much better when there's one from Alabama, but it's always life insurance. Does anybody ever notice that? It's always like he killed her for the $100,000 in life insurance. It's like, that's really not kind of worth it, to be honest.
Exactly. Guys, listen to me. If it's not that bad of an offense, get your family attorney to meet you down there to get interviewed. Okay. Do not answer.
Sorry, go ahead.
If it's a not that big a deal thing, get your family attorney, have him meet you down there. He sits in the interview room with you. You talk before you talk to the detectives or the investigators. If it is a capital murder offense, if it is something vehicular homicide, if it's something to do like that, you need to go out and find the very best criminal defense attorney that you can, and do not walk into that interview room until he's sitting in there with you.
No representation is made that the quality of legal services are that or greater than the quality of legal services you would get elsewhere from Scott Howell.
Bradley, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I like that.
So this week's Making the Donuts, we are going to swap up the intro and do a Law and Order intro.
Yeah.
And it's going to start by saying, I've got a guy that's a voiceover actor. It's going to record it. And it's going to say, in the insurance risk management world, poor customer service has become the standard. To combat this awful problem, are members of Elite Squad known as Team Portal Insurance. These are their stories.
Bradley, by the way, half of the first 48 episodes have been filmed in Mobile, by the way. I don't know if you know that or not.
I'm not a fan of that show, but I did know there was a bunch, but so not too far from where I am probably. So what's funny about the 48 hours deal is, they're trying to build this case and tell this story that the husband killed her. Right. And they always bring the life insurance into it. And it's always like, just bought way too much life insurance and what they should have. And it's like $250,000. Right. No one should have that much life insurance. And meanwhile, the insurance agents are over there wigging out like, oh my God, if I wrote a $250,000 policy on someone today, no matter who they are, they don't have enough life insurance.
Correct.
Right? So that's what always cracks me up is it's like they're trying to build this case like this is some ridiculous amount of money when they don't take into account the fact that if he did kill her for the $250,000, A, that's not enough money to kill somebody for, and B, that's definitely not enough money to live the rest of your life. If I'm killing somebody, it's enough money that I can live the rest of my life like the guy that has the pet giraffes, right? So anyway,
insurance agents from around the world. Bradley's getting ready to receive his next hurricane next week. It is affecting his internet today. I'm sure that the internet signals are getting overloaded from information being poured out for the next tropical storm or hurricane that is headed for him. I apologize if he sounds a little choppy today.
Am I choppy?
Little choppy.
Well, if we're recording on my end, I'm probably not actually choppy on the recording. So
awesome. So guys, we have got a very important podcast today. The last two episodes of the Insurance Guys podcast that you have probably heard, depending on the order of how they came out, were how to sell personal lines insurance. We're getting very granular. As I said on those episodes, the late, great Jerry Clower once said, the speech making's over. Now it's time to talk about real shit on how to do stuff. Bradley has got a guy on here today. If you are in commercial insurance, if you're a commercial producer, this guy is one of the best in the industry. He sells a shitload of commercial insurance. He can help you. Without further ado, I want to give him the introduction that he has always deserved. And then we're going to get right with the Lord today on talking about how to sell commercial insurance. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, he is originally from Tampa, Florida, and he currently resides in Land Lakes, Florida. He is married to the beautiful Elise, and they have one extremely handsome son named Nash. He received his bachelor's degree in business management from the University of South Florida, and he currently serves as a risk advisor for Florida Risk Partners, where he averages $10,000 to $20,000 per month in new business revenue. Remember, guys, we want to talk about revenue, not premium. I just said the word revenue, so you can back into that. Widely known as one of the best cold call marketing droppers in the industry, ladies and gentlemen, it is my profound honor today to introduce to you first-time guest on the IGP, and I promise you it will not be his last. Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you Mr. Kyle Houck. How are you, Kyle?
I am doing great, Scott. Thank you for the fantastic introduction. I feel like we need to have the Bulls 90s music in the background going. I love it. Bradley, thanks for having me on. I'm excited and humbled to be here, guys.
Man, listen, we got to get the hay down where the goats can get to it today, guys. We got to start with a start and end with an end. Let's back up for just a minute because I want these guys to all know kind of your background. Now, the reason I want to do this, Kyle, is I think there's a lot of agency owners out there that are looking to hire rock stars as commercial agents in their office. You are an example of those rock stars that are out there and what I know to be the truth as to who to hire and who not to hire. And before we get started on how to sell commercial insurance, tell us your background, because it's like I always tell people, everything that happened up until now affects the insurance agent that you are today. So talk to our principal agents out there about where you came from to help them kind of understand the kind of people they need to be hiring.
Definitely. So like you mentioned, I went to school at USF here in Tampa, studied business because I didn't really know what I wanted to do and figured that's a good fallback. You can do a lot of things with that, right? So I was still in school. I got hired by a company that did direct B2B sales for office supplies. We represented a subsidiary of Staples. That company was called Quill. They didn't have any, retail stores that you could walk into. So, we were selling for them, and I was going B2B, walking into a bunch of businesses that I had never been into on a daily basis, anywhere between 20 and 40 or 50, depending on how the day was going. And trying to, win them over and build rapport with them and ultimately get them to buy office supplies through me and through Quill versus them going to the store to, Office Depot or wherever. So I did that for an extraordinarily long time for that field, man. I was there for about 5.5 years, having no real prior sales experience. I had little jobs before that, but nothing that was where I cut my teeth. And so I've applied a lot of the things that I learned, from my time there to stuff that I do today. And then, so I got promoted to assistant manager there probably 2 to 3 years after I had started. And so my roles changed a little bit. I was running a lot of meetings, training a lot, interviewing people, and all still doing that while going into these businesses. So that's something that I'm sure we'll get into as the show progresses on. But after a while, the progression just kind of stopped. And I wasn't really getting, to the level where I wanted to be, which was running my own gig. And it was time for a change. So I got hooked up with a PEO, which, professional employer organization for those that don't know. And, that's kind of it's a totally different thing. I wasn't selling something that was a commodity like the office supplies. I was selling more of a service and selling them something strategic. So, that is the payroll, the HR, the employee benefits, the workers' comp all tied into one. I got hooked up with them and was there for a couple years, and there was a merger. We got bought out, or there was an acquisition, and my position was eliminated. And while I was there, David Carrruthers was actually, he had just started up Florida Risk Partners, and I got introduced to him through one of our guys that was like head of channel development at the PEO I was at. And so David and I met and we had lunch, and we ended up setting up a day where he and I went out on cold call marketing jobs, which was fascinating because I'd never done that with anybody else besides like myself and selling the office supplies. So it was cool to get a little bit of a different perspective from a totally different industry. And, we met like 1 or 2 times after that. There wasn't really a ton of business that he and I did together while I was at the PEO, but I do remember we met for lunch one day at the always fantastic Cheesecake Factory. And this guy, dude, I'm sitting there talking, and I noticed he's got 2 smartwatches on, like 2 fit. I'm like, dude, hang on a second. And I'd met him like once or twice before this. I'm like,
this is David?
Like, yes. I'm like, dude, are you wearing 2 smartwatches right now? Like what could possibly make somebody have the need to do that? And so I think that's what really got him, on board with me. And, then we did the marketing drops after that. And, so I ended up.
What was the logic behind the 2 smartwatches?
Dude, so to this day, I'll never know. And I don't know if he's ever told me. I think one of them was a Fitbit and one of them was his, his Apple Watch or something like that. But it was completely ridiculous and totally a David Carrruthers move for anybody that knows him.
I know Paradiso does an Apple Watch, I think, on his right hand and a usually very nice watch on his left hand. And I asked him, I said, why do you have 2 watches? He said, that's work. That's jewelry, kid.
David actually brought that up the other day because somehow this came up again, but I figured that was a little bit of a funny story. But
one thing I've always noticed about David's smartwatch, though, is it's 100% on brand. The band is Florida Risk Partners colors.
No accident there. Yeah. So we kind of kept in contact. And then when I was, when I was no longer with the PEO, he reached out and was like, hey, I heard about what happened. We should talk. I'm looking to bring on a producer. You've got a lot of the qualities that I look for. I don't typically like to hire people from the insurance industry, rather, to come work in my agency. And I think that it would be good for us to meet and kind of discuss what that might look like. And so we did. And here I am.
So Kyle, let's get to the meat and potatoes of this.
Sure.
So the one thing that I've learned from talking to both you and David about you, and this goes into really, I feel like first things first. When you were at Quill for 5.5 years,
Yep.
You became institutionalized. And what I mean by that, correct me if I'm wrong, you were expected to make how many cold calls per day with Quill for five and a half years, guys, for 5.5 years.
Yep. So it was very based on, what we call law of averages or law of, numbers or whatever. Like there was a formula that, was proven to work over, every office throughout the country. There was, I don't know, something like 60 of them. But yeah, I mean, it was, if you went out and saw 50 businesses, you were going to meet with 6 decision makers. And of those 6 decision makers, you were going to, be able to close 2 deals. And so you were looking to close 2 deals a day. And that was kind of the bar that was set. And eventually, as your skill sets developed, you didn't have to see 50 businesses to close 2 deals, obviously,
Right.
But that was what was ingrained into us. And that's what I tell a lot of new people that I've spoken with in this industry is you kind of got to make up in numbers what you lack in skill initially, because eventually you'll get the technical knowledge of insurance, which I still don't even have. I mean, I'm trying to get my CIC right now just so I can have a better understanding of technical insurance stuff. So I still don't even have all that knowledge. But what I do have is the ability to go out and work my butt off and get in front of people and just have conversations.
Okay. So for these agents that don't know what this is, and I asked you this before we got on the podcast because I didn't know what this was.
Mm-hmm.
Explain to them, the 250,000 agents that are listening, a lot of whom are commercial insurance agents. What is a cold call marketing drop? What exactly is that?
Yeah, what I mean by that is just I'm walking into a business that I've never been into before. I may have done some research. I should have done some research. Like to have an effective marketing drop, you need to do research on the front end. That's like the first thing, right? In Florida for us, we have the workers' comp stuff is what we lead with because the information is public domain. I can get their carrier, their X date and all that before I walk in. So I have a little bit of ammo when I go in to have that conversation. But all I'm looking to do is go in, introduce myself to the gatekeeper and ultimately find out who the decision maker is. And if I'm able to talk to him right then and there, then great. But I'm not looking to have a meeting with them right there. In fact, if that does happen, there's probably something wrong. Like they've probably got some sort of issues with their current program or whatever. And that's a little bit of a red flag, but I'm just looking to get the info of who to speak with so that I can set up a time to actually have that first appointment.
And let me be clear on something. I want to make sure we understand this because again, we're getting very granular. Now that you're in the insurance industry and you've been very successful and you've got some time and distance away from Quill,
mm-hmm.
Is it still better for all of these agents out there to get in their vehicle and go to a business, meet face-to-face, kneecap to kneecap with a gatekeeper that way? Or is it now better to use the phone first, to call first? Which one of those two do you find more success with?
So for me, it's the first thing, is going out and meet with them in person. That's just what I learned how to do initially in my sales career. So that's what I'm most comfortable with. But I think that COVID has presented a little bit of change in how those, there may not be people sitting in the office anymore. The decision makers or gatekeepers, they could just be completely remote 100% now. So that throws a little bit of a wrench in everything. But for me, it's definitely going out and meeting with them because think about it. So if I go in and I talk to a gatekeeper, right? And I get the information of who I need to speak with. When I call back, I've already got a rapport built with that gatekeeper. I could be like, hey, hey, Bob, or hey, Susie, it's Kyle with Florida Risk. I had stopped by last week in the office trying to get in touch with so-and-so that handles the workers' comp, and they were just out, and I wanted to follow up with you and touch base with them and whatever your pitch is, you can get into it from there. But you've already built that rapport with them and you've done it in person so they can put a face to a name. It's much harder to turn somebody down when they can do that versus just, not ever have met them,
So guys, I don't want you to miss what he just said because he kind of blew past it just a few minutes ago. Rule number 1, Kyle Houck's rule number 1. Before he calls, gets in his vehicle and goes to a business, he is looking at their website. He's finding out all the public information he can about them. He is doing that same research that anybody should be doing prior to calling on a business. Number 1, Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is this business a good fit for what we're looking to do, right? Is this our stuff?
So, and on that note, my opinion is that me as a business owner, nothing pisses me off more than when someone cold calls me and I can tell they did not do 1 ounce of research at all.
It's a waste of time, right?
Yeah.
Why are you wasting my time?
Exactly. I had someone call. I was actually going to tell the story before we got on the air, but it'll be fine on the air. I just recently signed up with a new payroll company, and I was talking to the guy that signed me up. This is for Portal. I was talking to the guy that signed me up about me sending them some of my clients, them send me some of theirs. I send them some of theirs. Secretly, I'm trying to do the whole David Carrruthers recruiting kind of thing, right? But he's like, yeah, gung ho, whatever. And this is a national firm, and I should have known better. And then about 2 weeks later, I get a call from another guy from the same payroll company wanting to welcome me on board and also wanting to take care of my workers' comp. And I'm like, I didn't say this, but I'm like, did you not see that you were calling an insurance company? Like you might should have asked, do we do workers' comp first?
Right.
And I would have said yes. And then you could have taken the conversation in a whole different direction. But I did say this. I said, this is a really good way to ensure that I don't send any of my clients to you guys.
So Kyle, COVID hits, law of large numbers. Florida Risk Partners has the sensibility to understand that Kyle getting in his vehicle and driving to 10, 15 businesses a day, however many, depending on traffic, depending on the size of the city you live in, is not as efficient as you could be if you had someone on the phone, banging the phone, making appointments for you. Because remember, guys, the telephone is the greatest sales tool ever devised in the history of mankind. So at some point, you and David put your head together and you said, what if we had a virtual assistant that was calling the types of businesses that we want to reach out to, setting appointments for Kyle. So instead of Kyle driving all over the city, oh, let's go over here and over there, he's setting those appointments for you. And now you've got this list of businesses that have shown interest after, I guess, you call them back. Tell us about that process with the VA. Tell us the good, the bad, the ugly about that.
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's been a learning process, I think, for all parties involved. But overall, it's been good because, he's been able to step in. And this guy, Marvin, that we've got, that's our VA, he doesn't have any insurance background or knowledge, and he doesn't need to. We just need him to call places that we're trying to get in and try to set an appointment for us. That is all, right? So the way that works is we dump in all of our info from the workers' comp database, and he's calling stuff that renews 2-3 months out, whatever. I combed through that list. I was telling Bradley before you got on and when we were chatting before, I combed through that list, and I'm going to pick out any of the big middle market stuff that, I want to do a lot of research on and go in and talk to them in person and all that. But, anything that kind of fits in our target market, if you will, like the service contractors, the plumbers, HVAC, whatever, electricians, we'll comb through that data, send it over to him, and he's calling on those people. So, we have all those calls recorded in HubSpot, and I can listen to them. So I go in and he started off really hot, right? Like he was setting appointments and, some of them either weren't answering or, maybe it just wasn't super productive. So I went back and then there was a period where it just kind of dropped off. So I was like, okay, something's happening here. I need to go in. So I listened to some of the calls and I picked out a few things. I'm like, boom, all right, we need to have a call to go over some of these things to help him get back on track.
Okay, let's stop. Let's stop right there. Let's stop. I told you we're going to get very, very granular here. We're going to get down to the lowest common denominator.
Sure.
First question, does Marvin speak perfect English or does he have an accent at all?
It's a slight accent. I mean, like he speaks pretty good English. Like you can tell that he's not, I guess, from the States, but it's not bad English. It's a little bit slow and can be choppy, which is, part of the problem that, that we addressed, and just some ways that he could, I guess, kind of improve on the conversation that he's having, with that. But he doesn't have a terrible accent by any stretch.
Okay. Question number 2. You said you went in and you listened to some of the calls. A few things you heard were kind of, I don't want to say cringeworthy, but things that you immediately were like,
well, it was, yeah.
Dude, we got to switch this. We can't do this. What were a couple of those things?
He was leaving some awkward pauses and he was asking a lot of questions. So when he could have taken control of the conversation and really got to the direction of setting the appointment, he was kind of pausing and just leaving things open. And what I mean by that is he would say, things to the effect of like, if the person wasn't there, he would say, okay, well, do you know when they might be back? So there's a couple problems there. I mean, there's doubt words in there. It's like, do you know when he might be back? Or so you're giving complete control to that gatekeeper, and their job in the first place is to keep you away from the decision maker, right? So that just makes it way easier for them. So it's like, okay, so the first thing that we need to do is be a little bit more direct and kind of tell them versus ask, and what I mean by that is saying things like, okay, if the gatekeeper is saying that decision maker, Bob or whoever is not in, I'm going to say something like, okay, yeah, I totally understand. He's going to be back in tomorrow, right? So like, that's a yes or no answer for that gatekeeper. If they're going to be in tomorrow, they're going to say, yeah. I'm like, okay, great. And then mornings are better than afternoons, right? And they either are or they aren't. If morning's better, then great. I'll call him in the morning. If they say no, he's a slow, to get in, and afternoon after lunch is probably better. Well, okay, great. Now I have the time to call this guy. I'm going to say, thank you, gatekeeper. I really appreciate your time. I'll give him a call back or her a call back in the afternoon tomorrow.
Okay.
Done. Right. So that was the first thing.
So let me make sure I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of asking, are mornings better than afternoons? He's basically telling the gatekeeper mornings are better than afternoons, correct? Or
exactly.
Mornings are better than afternoons. Tell me.
Think about it, dude. Like if somebody calls you and is asking you like, when's a better time for them to come by and talk to you? If they say that, you're going to be like, I don't know, man, I'm really busy. I don't have time for this. Like it leaves the door open for you to give them an objection.
Right. So as we talked about guys in personal line selling, we've got to be confident when we're making these appointments in commercial sales. We've got to be confident. We've got to word track this thing so that we stay in control of the conversation. Correct, Kyle?
Absolutely.
So we can't be asking a bunch of questions and letting them take the control of the conversation, because what's going to end up happening is they're going to hang up on you or tell you he's busy and he can't talk to you or whatever he says.
Right.
So we've kept in control of the conversation. We've trained our VA to ask the right questions. You're constantly listening to those calls to make sure that he is saying things with the exact tonality and posture that you need him to say them, and their exact verbiage that he needs. So let's say he sets an appointment.
Yeah.
And what happens next in terms of, if he's the quarterback, he's handed the ball off to you and you're the running back that's looking to run this thing in the end zone.
Yep.
So tell me what happens next.
Research, man. I'm going to go and do research on the company. I want to find out, who they're currently, like I mentioned, we lead with workers' comp, right? So I'm going to go in, I'm going to find out who their carrier is, and I can determine a few things from that. Like in Florida, it's pretty straightforward with the workers' comp. The rates are state mandated. And it seems to be a lot of people that are with payroll companies, but what doesn't happen on a lot of those policies is almost never is there a dividend on there, which is an easy conversation for me to have. And there's certain carriers that don't offer dividends. So when I see those carriers on the policy, I'm like, okay, cool. I know this is going to be one of the talking points that we're going to discuss. They probably have never even heard that there's a dividend option, right? And a lot of times there's no credits put on those. So I'm going to do my research. I'm going to find out, the basic facts. And then, when I go in, so this is a distinction that I do want to point out is, while on the phone trying to set those appointments and we're telling them versus asking and kind of asking those closed-ended questions, when we're in person and doing that first meeting or second meeting or whatever, I'm asking open-ended questions. I want to get with the decision maker and let them do most of the talking and me listen and pick up on things that are important to them. Like that's not the time for closed-ended questions and trying to strong arm people. That's the time for you to listen so that you can figure out how to close these people.
So Kyle, let me ask you this question. When he sets that appointment, when Marvin sets that appointment for you, is that typically an in-person appointment, or is that you're calling, or the prospect knows you're about to call them at 3:00 on Thursday?
The latter. It's been recently since COVID for sure. I'd like to get back to the point where we're meeting in person, because that's just, I'm kind of old school, man. Like I'm not an old dude. I'm 33. I'm more new school than anything, but I've got like an old school mentality. I like meeting with people and shaking their hand and can pick up on body language. You can pick up on all these other nonverbal cues that you can't really do on the phone. Like right now it's been more of on the phone, but there will be a time here before too long where we're having them set them for us and we're coming out and meeting with them in person.
Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to role play.
Okay.
Bradley, get ready. We're going to role play. You ready to role play?
My internet's choppy, but we can do it.
Okay, here's what we're going to do. No, it's just going to be Kyle and I. We're going to role play.
Okay.
So first, Kyle, you and I have an appointment right now. Right now, we have an appointment. You are going to call me. I am the guy that handles insurance for a mid to large size plumbing contracting firm. Okay. And we've got, 100 employees, pretty good little workers' comp policy here. Guys, they are creating the wedge with workers' comp. And you just heard Kyle say it a minute ago. The reason they are creating the wedge with workers' comp, a lot of that information off of their workers' comp policy and their mod factor is public information that they can see. And once they see that there is a potential for them to save this company a bunch of money in workers' comp, they're going to go in and create the wedge and talk about things that they understand backwards and forwards related to workers' comp. Am I right, Kyle? Am I correct about that? Okay. So I'm the guy that handles insurance for this 100-person plumbing company out of Tampa, Florida. And you're going to call me. I've told Marvin, your VA, that I would like to set an appointment for 3:00 today. It's 3:00. First, I'm going to be the gatekeeper. So you are calling me at my scheduled appointment time. Ring, ring, ring. What are you going to say to me as the gatekeeper?
Hey, good afternoon. This is Kyle Houck with Florida Risk Partners, giving Scott a call for our 3:00 appointment to talk about the workers' comp renewal.
Oh, okay. Does Scott know that you're going to be, does he know that you're calling?
Yeah, absolutely. He's got a calendar invite for 3:00 today.
Okay, great. Now let's stop right there. Is that what you normally hear?
Yeah, right. Yeah, to some extent, a lot of times they just transfer you right over. But again, like you just mentioned it a few minutes ago, like confidence is key. You've got to act like you're supposed to be there. And that's something that stuck with me early on from my days doing the office supplies is you got to walk in like you're supposed to be there. You've got to command that presence like you're supposed to be there. So that's how I handle that situation if that's the case. But a lot of times they just transfer you right over if you tell them you've got an appointment already.
It's the same thing you do when you have to go into a dangerous neighborhood to do a property inspection. You just act like you're supposed to be there and everything else works out.
Right. Exactly. Bradley, that's a great point.
Well, I was telling Kenneth yesterday when I was at Alpha, we had to take pictures of every single house we wrote. And he was like, man, what if you did one that you were in kind of a sketchy area? I said, you just act like you're supposed to be there, dude. Everything works out.
That's it. Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. Okay, Kyle, now you've gotten through the gatekeeper, or maybe you had Scott's direct number. So you've just called me, the phone rang, and Scott has answered the phone. Hey, this is Scott Howell. How can I help you?
Hey, Scott, Kyle Houck with Florida Risk Partners. How are you?
Hey, Kyle, I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. Marvin, my scheduling assistant, had set up a time. He spoke with you last week for us to talk about your upcoming workers' comp renewal here at the beginning of October. I just wanted to make sure now was a good time. Shouldn't take too long.
Yeah. I've got just a few minutes. I've got another meeting I've got to get into in about 15 minutes. What exactly can you guys do for us? I'm assuming that's kind of what you hear from them.
Yeah, something to that effect. And again, a lot of times it's a carrier specific conversation, and I'm going to, key it towards the dividend or to their mod. If they got a bad mod, we're going to go that route. Yeah. So, let's start with that. So I would say something to the effect of, well, the reason I'm reaching out is for your upcoming policy period, your experience mod is going up 30 points. You're going to be paying an additional 30% on your workers' comp premium. So I just wanted to reach out to see what controls you guys have put in place, what you've talked about with your current agent to get your mod back to a reasonable level.
Well, my understanding was from talking to them that our mod factor was pretty good. Mm-hmm. We have been getting a little bit of a, dividend back each year. So are you saying it's not?
Yeah. So your mod is going up from a 1.2 to a 1.5. So what good would be considered for your industry is a 1.0. So the way that they determine that, and, I don't know that I need to get all into the mod calculation and everything right now, but, they match up your claims with what they'd expect you to have versus, what's average for your industry. If you were good or average, you'd be at a 1.0. So they take your payroll, they multiply it by the rate for your class code, that generates your premium. And then they multiply it by your mod factor, which if it, was 1.0, you'd be paying the state rates. If you're good or better than average, you're going to be below 1, right? So if you're better than average, let's say you're at a 0.8, that means you're paying 20% less than your peer group for your workers' comp premium. Now, conversely, if you're performing, lower than average or poorly, you're going to be above 1 where you're paying an additional premium. as I mentioned, you're going up from a 1.2, which is already 20% higher than the average for your industry, to a 1.5. So that's 50% higher than your peer group. I'm trying to figure out, what's going on, or why your agent thinks that's good.
Right. So let's stop right there.
Yeah.
You are basically creating the wedge between the insured, your prospect, and their current agency that's out there that's representing them.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be done in a number of different ways through workers' comp, because there's a lot of wedges there that you can get to, whether they're not getting the right dividend that they thought they should be getting or that they did get, or whether mod factor's too high, they haven't heard from their agency. Something to that effect is creating that wedge, and then you're continuing that conversation with them.
Correct.
So what would you do as a commercial insurance agent if they aren't leading with workers' comp to create a wedge? Let's say you are one of the many, because you guys have figured that out, and y'all, that's just how you do business down there, is through workers' compensation. But there's a lot of commercial agents listening to this right now that aren't leading with workers' comp. How should they create that wedge when they make that phone call?
Definitely. One of the other big wedges that you can use that's not specific to workers' comp is the audit, right? Like, the audit is something that happens on every policy, right? And you can use that on your general liability, but that's an easy way to create a wedge. And that's something where you ask one of those open-ended questions that I was talking about, that you just simply ask them, how was your audit for last policy period? Tell me a little bit about that process.
Right.
There's hardly ever any insured that is like, oh, my audit was awesome, dude. Thank you for asking. It went so smooth and we had a great time. Like, there's always some sort of issue that immediately causes them to, start offering up information about things that didn't go great.
Correct. Yeah. The insureds that I have that get audited, because as you know, certain class codes get audited every year, right? I mean, that, if you're, I'm trying to think of one of them right now, but contractors, a lot of contractor type businesses, every year you're getting an audit. Sure. And so a lot of times, let's say the insurance agent forgot to get with them mid-year, and they were projected to do 2.5 million in sales and they did 5 million. So now at audit time, they get back from the insurance carrier that they owe double the premium or whatever it is, above and beyond what they've already paid. And so they're pissed. Why didn't you call me? Why didn't you ask?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the conversations that I have with a lot of our, businesses that we're just bringing on or that we're, trying to, that are maybe new in business. They don't really have a good understanding of how that process works. And I'm asking them for their exposure. Well, it's really hard to say, I don't really, it's first year in business or whatever. I'm like, okay, well, here's the deal. Here's how the policy is going to be rated and what the implications are. Like, I need to get a good estimation of what the exposure is going to look like from a sales perspective of, sales revenue annually, or from payroll. Those are the two main things that the policy is going to be rated off of. And what we're going to do is we're going to follow up after Q1 with you to see if we're still on track with that. Because if we are, great. But if we're not, then we need to change that so that at the end of the year, like you just explained, you're not getting slapped with a huge bill, or conversely, that you're not overpaying and giving them an interest-free loan over the course of the year to the carrier.
So that is probably the best piece of advice I have ever heard, because I have clients right now that I know for a fact have shopped us in the past based on them. Some bitches just don't like doing an audit. And they're like, Scott, if you got some company that won't make me do an audit at the end of every year, you can put me with them. So I could see where another agent could call them and say, hey, tell me about these audits that you're having to do for your insurance carrier. And the first thing they're going to do is say, oh my gosh, I hate audits.
Right.
And that's just going to kind of kick that ball off the tee and start the ball game. Yeah. So we got to create this wedge with that particular prospect that we're talking to. You guys do it through workers' comp. Another great way to do it is through those audit questions, because nobody likes an audit. And then once we've created that wedge, now we're kind of getting to to the meat and potatoes of this thing, because you're going back and you're creating a quote or multiple quotes, depending on how many lines of business they have for that particular prospect. Now, once you do that, it's time to, now we're at fourth quarter, balls on the 5-yard line. We're either going to win or we're going to lose, right?
Mm-hmm.
How does that look from Florida Risk Partners? Are you guys, is that time we're going to meet kneecap to kneecap, or because of COVID, we're still kind of emailing stuff over and we're talking on the phone? How does that look?
No, I think that if it's a big enough account, if it's middle market and something in our wheelhouse, David and I are going to go out together and present that, present the proposals and what it looks like and do it that way. I also think that one of the things that we, had in place before COVID for some of the smaller market stuff was we were doing video quotes, video proposals. And that was great because we already had that in place. Everybody else had to adapt once COVID happened, but that allowed us to, I would get a proposal, have it on the screen and be able to record myself a quick, 5-minute video going over the proposal, and they can watch it whenever they want. So they don't have to make time for me during their middle of their business day. They can do it once they're sitting at home, on the couch with a glass of wine, doing whatever, and watch it then, and they can bind it right there. So that's been, those are the two main ways that we do it. I would say for some of the smaller stuff, I'll just give them a call, and I've been working on a lot of that stuff as of more recent lately, some of the smaller stuff that's been calling, and we've just been like flooded with business. So it's kind of interesting that, we didn't really miss a beat. And I know David's talked about it a number of times on our podcast, but we didn't really miss a beat when COVID came through. We still were doing business. So those have been the two ways. Yeah.
And just so we're clear, guys, I want to talk to the 250,000 insurance agents out there. So for David and Kyle, where maybe there's a lot of agents out there listening right now that are writing, say, auto service stations that are on a BOP, and maybe it's a $5,000 or $10,000, $15,000 annual premium policy, the stuff that David and Kyle are working on down there. And again, this goes back to doing research to figure out what's in your wheelhouse. But these are policies that are hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million insurance policies. These are not the $800 painting contractor GL policy, correct?
Yeah, I'm meeting with those people in person for sure.
Right.
David and I are going out. Again, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier with being able to pick up on nonverbal cues and just, there's something to be said for being able to get in front of somebody and create that rapport and relate with them as a person. And I think that, what we'll see is that COVID has made that even more true. Like people just genuinely want to get back to normal, right? It's sucked for the past year and a half or however long it's been. Sure. It's been weird for everybody. And I think people are looking for a little bit of normalcy to be restored. And so, that's the way I prefer to do things. If the account merits it, if it's a big enough account, for sure. If it's something simple that I can record and shoot over to, to the prospect, then that's great too. But that's the preferred method. Yeah.
There's two things I want to talk about real quick. Okay. And then we'll wrap this thing up.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, the close.
Yeah.
We've identified, we've researched, we've gotten the appointment. We've had our initial talk. They've agreed to let you give them a quote. They are intrigued with your product knowledge and the fact that you're telling them that, hey, more than likely, I can either save you some money on what you're paying right now on your workers' comp or some of the other lines, and you may not be getting the dividend that you're supposed to be getting every year, Mr. Client. Mm-hmm. So we've gotten them a proposal or an insurance quote. Doesn't matter if we do it in person. It does matter depending on the size of the account, but we've done that. It's time to close. As my friend Randy Jones says, it's time to get the check.
Sure.
What is yours and David's best close out? Is it just the assumptive close where hey, how do you want to pay for this? Or how does that go? Tell us.
Yeah, make the check out to Florida Risk Partners. Yeah. That's one of the things that I learned early on in my sales career is that you always have to go back to the close. And that's the one piece of advice that that was the third piece rather that I gave to Marvin on the phone was once he overcame the objection, you always have to go back to the close. It's not good enough to overcome the objection. and just sit there and wait for them to respond, because they're not going to know what to do. You have to kind of lead them in that path.
Right.
So going back to that clip, I mean, yeah, and David is much more fluent at it, than I am, but it's totally situational. A lot of times you don't even have to, a lot of times you can get them to come to the conclusion that we are doing business on their own. And that's the goal. So David finally got me the copy of Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And I must say it's one of the most fascinating books I've ever read. I've never been a huge sales book guy or whatever, but it's amazing. I haven't been able to put it down.
David loves the crap out of that book too.
Dude, have you read it?
I have read, air quotes, the audio version. I've made it about halfway through. I think I'm going to get the paper copy though, because it seems like paper copy is a lot.
You're able to retain things.
People I talk to seem to get a little bit.
Yeah.
It's the kind of book that you really have to retain things super well. It's less entertainment and more like I am studying this thing. And for books like that, for me, I'm better off going, directly to the written.
And there's tools in there. But one of the things is just getting them to kind of come to the conclusion on their own, your desired result, right? So if your process of going through and talking with, the prospect creates doubt and creates that wedge, and you present the solutions as to how you're going to fix them, and you're able to do a good job of articulating your value proposition, then they're going to come to that conclusion on their own that we need to do business. And they're going to ask you how we do this. And that's the goal, right? I want them to be like, okay, so what do we need to do to get this going? I don't have to put the hard close on somebody. I don't have to put the screws to them. That's not a good or usually typically a healthy sales process. It's stressful for people. I want them to come to that conclusion on their own, and they should do that, by the conversation that we've had over the course of the few meetings.
So guys, listen to me. I have my doctoral degree on the book, Never Split the Difference. Okay. I've read it probably 5 times. I read it again this weekend because we talked about it at the Young Agents of Tennessee conference. I'm going to give you some of the highlights of that book that Kyle is talking about right now. Number 1 is mirroring people, where you, as they're talking, you say the last 2 or 3 words of the sentence that they just said. It gets people comfortable and they feel like you're really listening to them. So whatever they say, if they end the sentence with whatever they end the sentence with, then you would just mirror those last 2 or 3 words to them. Here's the big one. And this is the one I think Kyle and David probably use a lot. It is called labeling. And now we're talking about emotion and feelings. So as you're going through a conversation with a prospect and they're talking about something that maybe upsets them a little bit, or is kind of a rough spot for them, you would say, well, Bradley, it sounds to me like blah, 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 blah. And you're basically putting words to their emotions, right?
It sounds to me like you've had a lot of issues with your audits in the past and you're not getting very much support.
Yes.
And you need somebody to help you with that.
Right. So it's either it sounds like, it seems like, or I think there's one more.
It feels like something like that.
So it's kind of a way to be assertive without being overly aggressive about it.
And what it's doing is it's pulling out them and their feelings, and it makes them feel like you're really listening and you understand.
Empathy.
You get it. Empathy. Yeah. That's right. Huge part of sales is empathy. So the last thing I will say regarding that is, you're on the right track and you're probably about to close that business, or at least get a shot at it, if you hear words like, that's right. Exactly. You're exactly right. You understand me. You get it. Those are all words that when you hear signs. Exactly. Those are closing signs. Those are things. Now, here's the worst thing that you can hear. Whether it's in your marriage or in a prospect's office, the absolute worst statement that you can possibly hear someone say, you'll hear your kids say it sometimes too when you're getting on their ass, is what is the verbiage? It's
you're right.
You're right.
And dude, so that's so funny, man, because
when you hear you're right, you are screwed.
Totally. So I read that part in the book and I was like, oh no, because I'm thinking about all these times that I've had conversations with my wife and she's just like, you're right. And I'm like, that's right. I am right.
Yes.
But after reading the book, I'm like, damn it, bro.
So go into that a little bit, because I haven't gotten that far apparently.
Because it's not like, I mean, and Scott, you've read it way more than I have. I'm in like chapter 9 right now, so you can elaborate on this. But my understanding of it is they don't have full buy-in at that point. They're telling you that you're right, but they're not fully on board with that notion.
They're just trying to get you to shut up, basically.
Exactly.
Correct.
Exactly.
The words "you're right" in any situation psychologically is shut the hell up. I don't believe whatever it is you're telling me, but I would really like for you to just shut the hell up right now.
Yes.
That's
Gotcha.
You're right. It's kind of like when somebody tells you in the course of whatever you're talking about that they might do something. The words "I might" is 99 times out of 100 means they're not going to do it. Well, exactly. I might do that. No, well, that's that. You might as well say I'm not.
Or I'll try.
Right.
I mean, you're setting yourself up for you're assuming that you're going to fail.
That's correct. And when you hear this come out of somebody's mouth, guys, you're right. Your the ego side of you is going to go exactly what Kyle said. Is you're going to say, "You damn right, I'm right.
Yeah.
I am right." And what you ought to be thinking in your head is, this person just wants me to shut the hell up because they don't believe what I'm saying.
So what do you do in that scenario?
You got to ask more of the open-ended questions and figure out what it is, what things are going to get this deal progressing back on the right track. And that's kind of where I'm at in the book. So I mean,
I'm thinking about all the times Scott told me I was right.
Oh, I do it all the time. I do it to everybody. People will be telling me all the things I need to do, and you need to do this. Blah. I'm like, you're right. You're right.
I do need to do that, but I'm
you're
not
right.
gonna.
To me is just like, okay, kid, I'll tell you you're right if you'll just shut up. So that's basically what that means. So we've got to the close. I got one more question for you, and then I'll let you go for the day, and then we're going to come back. We may do a part 2 of this at some point in time, but I think we've given these agents a lot of ammunition.
If the listeners want us to do a part 2, let us know and we'll do a part 2. How about we do that?
Absolutely.
That way we can hurt Kyle's feelings when no one wants to do a part 2.
No one is going to respond, and I'm never going to get a call.
I messaged in the podcasters group a picture of you, Kyle, and said currently podcasting with the most popular host of the Power Producers podcast. So I decided to.
I don't know about that, man, but
so here's the last question of the day.
Okay.
What is David Carrruthers the best at?
Smoking meats.
Well,
dude,
I'm talking insurance right now.
I mean, I think part of it is what we just talked about, where he is creating a wedge and getting. I remember one of the first appointments, or one of the first appointments that I remember he and I going on was where he was creating a wedge based around the workers' comp and some of the things that we've talked about. And the conversation kept progressing. And at the end, like I just said, the prospect came to the conclusion that they needed to do business with us based on solely the questions that he was asking and leading them down a path of self-realization. And so he's really good at that. He's good at asking the questions to get them thinking and creating that doubt. And he does it very indifferently, and like you don't even know that he's doing it. I would say that's been one of my main takeaways on some of the appointments that I've been on with him, over the course of my time here at Florida Risk.
One thing I've noticed about great commercial producers, here's just some, I guess, a grab bag of things I've noticed. Okay. They are very highly competent in the niche that they serve. If they have a specific niche, they are very confident and very high IQ in that niche. They are also very high EQ. They read people very well. Their life experiences have led them up to, they can basically look at somebody, talk to them for just a minute, figure them out, and just kind of understand who that person is. They are also very quick on their feet. Very quick on their feet. Somebody says something, buddy, they can come back and have a very measured, reasonable, rational response that fast. David is that guy.
Agreed.
Fast as you can say something on the other end, he's going to have a response that's going to be very measured, but it's going to be very accurate. Those are all things that I see with great commercial agents. They're high IQ. They have a high level of critical thinking skills. They are high EQ. They understand people. They understand their products. They understand what questions to ask. And psychologically, they just kind of know instinctively almost how to massage that prospect to get them to that place that they need them to be. What did I just describe David Carrruthers, or did I describe?
I mean, absolutely, like 100%.
Yeah, he's that.
You
guy.
also have to go into it, and David does this really well. You have to go into it being willing to lose the deal. If you go into it worried about digging your heels in or sticking to your guns are going to make you lose this deal, you're not going to stick to your guns or dig your heels in. You know what I mean? You have to go into it being like, hey, if they don't do these things, we're not going to pursue this relationship. It's kind of like, I know you guys get tired of me equating things to golf, but the best putter in the game of golf is a guy named Brad Faxon. And his entire strategy is act like it doesn't matter. He gets up there and acts like he doesn't give a crap whether he makes this putt or not. And it takes all of the emotion out of it, which takes the nerves out of it, which takes the stiff joints out of it, and everything flows so much better. I kind of look at it as the same way.
Yeah. By the way, Bradley, did you know Kyle's a scratch golfer?
I did not know that.
No, I am not. Don't you dare put that on me. That's not what
I was told.
Well, David doesn't really, I mean, he thinks so. He's so bad that he thinks anybody that can shoot in like the mid to high 70s is scratch.
So
my index is 5.3.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question. Do you have a blue and gold Florida Wrist Partners staff golf bag?
No, but I know somebody who does.
I do too.
I do not have one of those because if you're the guy that shows up to a golf course with that type of bag and you're not the pro or a pro, you're ridiculous.
Yeah, you gotta be pretty good to have the staff bag with your name on it.
That's right.
Kyle, I think we got the hay down where the goats could get to it, don't you?
I do, man. I think that was good. I think there was a lot of things that we talked about in there that hopefully are useful to some of the listeners out there. And I had a great time, man. It was enjoyable.
Well,
I have a question. Are our podcast listeners the goats?
They are. Right. Yeah. Got to get
they're the greatest of all time.
Got to get the hay down where the goats can get to it. So, Kyle, we will leave it up to them. We will leave it up to the masses, to the hundreds of thousands of agents listening to this. If you want a part 2 with Kyle, because here's what's going to happen, Kyle. I'm going to get off this podcast and think of 15 questions I should have asked you while we were on this podcast today. So I will have plenty of things that I can talk about on a part 2 that we didn't even get to. And I really didn't get as into the psychology of the prospect and those types of things as I kind of wanted to. But guys, as I always say, rewards come from action, not discussion. Get your ass out from behind that desk today and go out into the big bad world and do exactly what Kyle Houck told you to do. Build relationships, build rapport with people, make those calls that you need to make, to set the appointments, to go see the right people, to sell insurance, make money for your family, for your wife, your husband, your kids' college fund, and your parents that are struggling out there today. Write good business for the companies that you represent, and write good business for the agencies that you represent. Bradley Flowers, I love you.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Kyle.
Guys, you are listening to the Insurance Guys podcast, and we will see you back here next week. Thank you so much for being a part of our family. I hope this episode will help you go make more money and live the life that you deserve to live. Take care, and we'll see you back real soon. Thanks for listening to the Insurance Guys podcast. If you need to know more about me or you need to get in touch with Scott, you can always reach me at theinsuranceguyonline.com or email me at scott@iprotectinsurance.com. And if you need to get in touch with Mr. Bradley Flowers, go to portalinsurance.com or email him at bradley@portalinsurance.com. Guys, we love you. Thank you so much for listening to our show and being a part of our family. And we look forward to seeing you again next week on the next episode of the Insurance Guys podcast. Take care.